G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to Chapter 3 of the Path of Exile Survival Guide. In this episode, we pay our respects to a giant hunk of sentient wood, trek through the climb, break into a prison, and come face to face with Brutus, the Lord Incarcerator. Brutus is the first major boss fight in Path of Exile, and this episode will include a detailed analysis and guide to the Brutus fight, so make sure to check it out. So since we're level 9, I'm going to take a moment here to just take a quick stock of where we're at in terms of gear and see if there's any upgrades that need doing. Now, our Gnarled Branch is a low tier two-handed weapon. It's available from a very low level. However, it did roll a very nice physical damage stat, so we could actually continue using this for a while. But it's worth noting and mentioning that as far as two-handers go, there's actually some new tiers of weapons available at this time. You can see Primitive Staves available at level 9, and also Tribal Mauls here available at level 8. Now, I actually noticed, checking in the vendor here, that there's this one, a Tribal Maul with 42% increased physical damage and some crit strike chance. Crit strike doesn't make much difference at this level, but the physical damage is very good. And we can tell that it's very important in Path of Exile to continue upgrading your weapons when you're a weapon attack-based character. Spellcasters can get by without needing to change their weapon too often, but attack-based characters need to keep their weapon up to date. So, even though this is a well-crafted two-handed weapon here, you can notice that it has 12 to 24 physical damage, while this Tribal Maul has 15 to 23, so it's actually, you know, not too different. It's slightly slower attack speed, but this is a white one, this is a non-crafted one. So when you see something that has some extra crafting on it, 23 to 33 damage, then this is obviously a big step up. Now this only costs transmutation, so I'm going to go ahead and buy that. You could, at this point, buy yourself a white Tribal Maul and use another transmutation on it, just to give yourself, hopefully, some sort of damage affix, or you could just keep an eye out for these. Since I found a nice one in the vendor, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade and grab this new Tribal Maul so we can continue smashing things. Defensive gear at this point is not too crucial as long as you've tried to pick up a couple pieces here and there. Make sure all of your slots are full at the moment, and if you can get anything that has any life or resistances on it, then that's going to be golden. We've got a little bit of life on our boots here. We got lucky with the Iraku Tiki, and that's about it as far as we have gear-wise at the moment. We have a little bit of life and a little bit of resistance here on our Rustic Sash, so we're in fine shape to continue on. So heading back into the ledge from the waypoint, you'll notice that there's 3 little stones here. These actually form an arrow pointing in the correct direction to continue on further through the game. So I'm going to follow this direction, which happens to be down this time. In some of the cases it could be upwards, so just following those arrows is the way to go. And you'll notice that we are one-shotting everything now. And that is thanks to our new weapon upgrade. We were already crushing things with our previous weapon that had a very good roll in it, but having upgraded to a Tribal Maul with also a good roll in it as well, that good increased physical damage, going to be absolutely crushing it. So along here we're just going to be doing the same thing, just killing the very large packs and things that get in the way. We don't really need too much experience now since I'm a little bit over leveled, so there's not too much to really, there's not much point to sitting here and killing every single mob. However, we're about to encounter someone, the one true god of Path of Exile, Kuduku. Now, Kuduku is praised by many in the Path of Exile community as being one of our deities, a deity of RNG, otherwise known as random number generation. It's just kind of, one of those weird quirks that forms in a community over time, but as an actual enemy to face, Kuduku uses lightning damage, and he is completely stationary, being a gigantic totem. He is the god of totems in Path of Exile. His primary attack here is Spark, which just puts out a pretty non-threatening looking little spark. This many in this wide and open area aren't very dangerous, but sparks do bounce off walls. You'll notice that it hits the wall and actually bounces back. And in a tight room with spellcasters casting sparks like this, the room can very quickly fill up with sparks and a lot of lightning damage can happen. Lightning damage, by its very own virtue, is erratic. Sparks are very erratic in the way they travel, and it's erratic in the amount of damage it deals. Sometimes lightning damage will deal nothing, and then other times it will deal a ton of damage in one go, so you just gotta be a little bit careful around lightning damage. We have plenty of life at the moment, and Kuduku is not very threatening. Kuduku does have another attack though. Once we get closer, he'll actually use Shock Nova, which does substantially more damage. Now, we're still very tanky at this point, but you'll notice the Shock Nova actually does damage only in this ring around the character, and if we move in here, it actually deals no damage, and he goes back to sparking us. So, easiest way to deal with him is to, just try and stay out of that Shock Nova range and move in with the single target attack. And we are doing atrocious amounts of damage right now, so not a problem whatsoever. We might check this padded vest to see if it has a life roll on it or anything better for us. Well, it's slightly better than our other one. It's not much of an upgrade. let's continue on down the ledge, having defeated the challenging might of Kuduku. Leveling up our decoy totem just here makes him tankier, so it's always good to do. We can put him down and he'll be able to survive more damage taken. We've got a few of Fire Warbands mods here, a few of the, a champion or magical monster cannibals as well, so we'll just take down all these guys at the same time, maybe get a little bit of extra loot. We're doing very well though overall in terms of loot and effectiveness. Following this sort of a strategy, this sort of a two-handed, tanky, lots of damage Marauder is very effective at this point in the game, especially if you're slightly over-leveled for the content you're currently doing. A lot of loot there we can take a look through, but there's nothing too much I know that I need. We did find a rare chest though, so I'll go ahead and identify that. And we'll notice that it does have a life and resistance roll, which is exactly what we're looking for. Now, however, this one does require some dexterity that we don't currently have. And this is an interesting point. Certain gear, as you progress through the game, will have higher and higher stat requirements. Some will require dexterity and some will require intelligence. Now, as a Marauder, we're likely going to be just getting lots of strength as we move throughout the passive tree, but there are ways of ensuring that you can equip gear that might be useful for you. Like, this is a nice chest at the moment. It would be great to be able to equip this, but we don't have any dexterity. Now, there are some ways of sort of fixing that problem. Just down here, you'll notice versatility gives dexterity and intelligence, and the Path of Exile passive tree is actually quite flexible. You notice we've been given some refund points here, and the idea is that you can actually spec into things in the passive tree that will help you out for a while, then spec out of them later. That includes things such as elemental resistances and dexterity and intelligence. Now, you can also get it through gear as well. Amulets can provide dexterity, for example, as can gloves. Gloves can roll dexterity as one of their magical modifiers, and amulets can actually get it as one of their implicit modifiers, so a jade amulet gives dexterity even when it's only white, a non-magical item. So now that we're in the climb, we're going to stick to this sort of right wall over here, and you'll notice that these flame hellions that I'm killing actually explode with fire when you kill them, and that effect is called burning ground. You can see standing on there, we take a slight damage over time. Now I have a bit of life regeneration from my Rakutiki, and also from my character by default here. I think we don't have any life regeneration on my character yet. It's literally just from the Rakutiki, and that is enough to counter that that fire damage over time, because at this point it's not very strong, and that life regeneration is countering that damage. So you can counter damage over times with by having a decent amount of regeneration in your character, and not causing too much of a problem at the moment. These goats use an ability called Leap Slam, which can most easily be avoided just the same way you'd avoid a roar. Wait until I slam, and then move out of the way. If you stutter step or kite like this and just keep moving in between attacks, they'll be unlikely to hit you with their Leap Slam. If a bunch of them do Leap Slam on you at the same time, though, you can take quite a bit of damage. Now we're about to come across the zone boss for this zone here, for the climb, and he is Ironpoint the Forsaken. He uses this cool green Rain of Arrows attack, and this is a bow skill that fires an area of arrows that rain down your character, and it can hit pretty hard as well. Obviously, we're very tanky at the moment, but there's not too much of a trick to fighting Ironpoint the Forsaken, really. Just run up to him and take him out. You can use some of the AoE abilities, usually surrounded by skeletons. You can use your ground slams to take out the skeletons at the same time as damaging him. Or you can just run up and focus him down with a bit of single target action like we did there. Found a higher roll, Rustic Sash. The fire resistance is more helpful for us at the moment. The fire resistance we have is also countering the effect of the burning ground. So burning ground does fire elemental damage, and our fire resistance is mitigating some of the damage we're taking from that. And that combined with our regen means that's why I'm not really taking any damage from that. There's another thing to watch out for in this zone. You'll notice that occasionally those goats will have some little floating kind of like crossed sword icons with fire around them. It looks a bit like a buff that's surrounding them. It's actually triggered by dealing physical damage to them, so attacking them when they have the Molten Shoal buff up can actually trigger a powerful fire damage explosion that can do quite a bit of damage to you. It's a good idea to get in the habit of not attacking enemies that have Molten Shoal up unless you're using a ranged attack to attack them from a distance. So we've now entered the lower prison, and in here there'll be a waypoint at the very entrance here, and we can use this waypoint to head back to Lionel's Watch because we actually get a quest reward for making our way to the prison here. Back in town from the prison, we can catch up with some of the NPCs in here in order to give us some assistance through what is essentially a fairly dangerous zone. Ness is actually going to give us another skill gem reward. However, this time we actually get introduced to support gems. So, in Path of Exile there are active skill gems, and then there are supporting gems. Now we have two options here, melee splash and added fire damage. I'm going to take added fire damage. Now the way support gems work in Path of Exile is that you'll have noticed by now that many pieces of gear contain linked sockets. So a main socket we can simply do something like place our ground slam into one socket. And then we can actually link support gems, modifying support gems to those main active skills. And this is how you progress and change and alter the functionality and increase the potency of various different skills. Now in this case, added fire damage is very simple. It just increases the overall damage of the skill by adding some of its physical damage as extra fire damage. So if we deal 100 points of ground slam damage, which is physical, this adds another 25 points of fire damage on top. So this just straight up increases the damage of ground slam, giving it a bit of fiery damage added on top of it. However, that other skill gem we had access to, we can actually go in here and look at other alternative skill gems here. There's a whole row of them. Things like Melee Splash, for example. This actually makes the skill that you link it to deal less damage, but give it an area of effect splash. So you could actually link Heavy Strike, which we know to be a single target skill, and this would actually add a splash, an area of effect to that skill, turning it into an AoE skill. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You can add extra projectiles, you can make projectiles bounce between targets, you can add all sorts of different type of damage, make things critical strike more often. There's a lot of different things you can do. We can have blind, chance to flee, we can even put spells on totems. We can gain life gain on hit here as a potent support gem for survivability, giving us life return on hit. There's a lot of different options here for support gems, and you can feel free to explore these, and we'll come back and get some more support gems in the future when it's going to help us out. But for now, it's quite enough for us to just add fire damage to our ground slam. With this higher physical damage weapon, we're going to be able to benefit from that quite a great deal. Now, just make sure that for your support gem to work, it does have to be linked to an active skill. Just having this in an empty socket like this doesn't actually do anything. It needs to be supporting some skill in particular, and it only affects the supported skill. Now, you can have multiple added fire damages linked to multiple different skills, but you can only have one added fire damage or one of the same type of support gem linked to any one skill. So we can't actually link Ground Slam to like 5 different added fires to increase the damage. That's actually not allowed. Just the one is allowed. So we're going to take our fiery ground slam here into the prison, the lower prison. There is 2 sections of the prison. We're going to have to fight through various different undead enemies. We've got a rare encounter just here. Taking note of the rare's affixes, we can see there's kind of like spiky, fast-moving aura around him is actually a haste aura. Allies move and attack faster, and he himself has extra fire damage as well. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem for us though, especially with our added fire damage ground slam one-shotting all of his friends there as well. I'll grab that portal scroll. And we did indeed level up to level 10 here. I'm going to continue heading up towards Butchery, which will give us even more physical damage and attack speed. Now, in confusing sort of layout zones like this, the easiest way to find your way through is going to be to pick a wall and stick to it again. So we're going to pick this left wall here, and just ground slam our way to victory, following this left wall until we eventually find ourselves up in the upper prison. There's a coral ring. I'm going to grab that coral ring. It's actually a perfectly rolled coral ring too. Maximum life roll on a coral ring, or white coral ring, is 30 life, and that's actually what that's rolled. So if we wanted more tankiness now, we could actually swap out one of these iron rings for this coral ring, and that boosts our life up a great deal. That life is also scaled by any life passive nodes we have on the tree as well, making it even more potent. So we're plenty tanky and we're dealing plenty damage, but I'll go ahead and chuck that on now. I will keep aside that iron ring though, because we'll use that for something a little bit later on. You'll notice that here in the prison we'll also encounter more Necromancers. As before, the idea is to take out the Necromancer first, and then you can deal with all of the zombies and things around him. Doing so will make your life a little bit easier, as you don't have to keep killing resurrected monsters. I actually found an Orb of Fusing, which is a slightly more rare and valuable currency. This will actually allow you to link sockets on an item, so later on when we have really nice gear, but it doesn't quite have the sockets we need, we could actually use a fusing to fuse 2 sockets together. It's actually randomized in the way it works. We'll go over that in the future when we need to actually link something. I have found my way to the doorway, but there's someone in this zone that I must hunt down first. Now, for educational purposes, I'm going to introduce you guys to Chatters. Now, Chatters, I did need to come back and find and hunt down, because he's just the side zone boss of this zone here. But for educational purposes, I am, of course, going to hunt him down. Now, he actually happens to have a whole bunch of Brine Rot Raiders with him, so I'm going to pull away the Brine Rot Raiders. I'll chuck down my decoy totem there, and I'll use my added fire ground slam to take them out. And we actually need to get off of them when we kill them, because those Brine Rot Raiders actually leave a ball lightning effect after we kill them, which deals consistent lightning damage in that area. A lot of lightning damage for a short duration, so we'll go ahead and deal with that. Now you'll notice that everything is lighting up and glowing around Chatters, and the reason for that is he actually has a hatred aura which adds cold damage to enemies, and that's based on their physical damage, much like our added fire is. So enemies that deal large amounts of physical damage, like zombies that when they pour at us, will actually deal a large amount of cold damage too, which can chill and freeze us and just deal more damage overall. Shatters himself also uses a skill known as Glacial Hammer, which we have access to. It's a play-in skill, and it can freeze and chill us too, and deals a large amount of cold damage. You can see it just chilled us there, and after he actually hits you with it, he leaves what's called Frost Call on the ground as well, which after a delay will trigger and then deal cold area of effect damage there. So if you can kill Shatters from range, that's going to be the best thing. All of his attacks are very melee-centric. His Glacial Hammer can only hit you from close, so you can simply sidestep it. And in Path of Exile, it's quite possible to, when you see someone wind up to do an attack, to actually sidestep it. So if you keep moving, you're going to avoid most of that incoming damage. I'm going to pick up that chromatic item, of course, to go take back to the vendor and sell for a chrome. And now we're going to head into the upper prison. Much the same deal in the upper prison, though we do want to look out for skeletons using bow attacks. Now you'll note this one here, Brittle Bleeders. What these will actually use a skill called Puncture. You can see it uses Puncture there on their tooltip. And the way Puncture works is, Puncture creates a physical damage over time effect that bleeds our life away. Now we have a lot of health and we have health regen, but you can see our health ticking down as we move around there. It actually deals a lot more damage if you're moving, so if punctured, the best solution is to stand still and wait for it to expire. We can see it in the top left here. Standing still, and you can flask. If you think you can handle the damage over time effect, then you can move around using a flask to counteract its damage, but punctures become very devastating in higher levels. When you move around, you take large amounts of damage. You can actually dispel a puncture or a bleeding style effect with a staunching flask, which is one of the magical rolls that can happen on a flask. So we're going to go ahead and take these guys out. If you're taking too much damage from puncture, just remember the best thing to do is actually to stand still. Now you'll notice this Necromancer's actually been harassing us with something here, this giant green thing. It's really quite flashy. It doesn't deal any damage, but what that actually is a curse. It's so flashy so that you know exactly what's going on, that you have been cursed, and you can see the curse floating above your head. This particular curse, this Necromancer using it on us, this green one just there, is Enfeeble, which simply lowers the amount of damage we deal, lowers our chance to get a critical strike, and it makes us less likely to hit enemies and deal less damage to them. So it severely hampers our combat effectiveness against enemies. Found a quality flask there. I'll go ahead and pick that up because we'll use that for the vendor recipe. And I also found a 20 quality piece of armor here. 20 quality armor and weapons can actually sell for armor scraps and blacksmith whetstone. So I'll go ahead and take that back to the vendor as well for that'll give me an armor scrap as it's a helmet. Puncture bleeding me out. Learn to listen to the sound of punctures and become afraid of that sound, because later on in the game it will be very dangerous. Moving through the prison and taking out any magic monster packs that I encounter. I found an Orb of Regret first up. Orb of Regrets, I mentioned earlier in the last episode, allow us to actually, we can use them and we can actually get another respec point. So we don't need to use that though, we don't need the respec points, and we have many available to us from quest rewards, so we can actually hold on to this to potentially trade with other players for in the future. Gonna grab that Rustic Sash. We have a few uses for Rustic Sashes in the future, so it might be handy to hold on to those for now. I'm going to use this next passive point and get Butchery as well, which will dramatically increase our damage. Traveling through the upper prison, you may eventually find yourself encountering the unique Necromancer Boss, Sawbones. Sawbones, very similar to the last Necromancer, will raise enemies, but he has a few other tricks up his sleeve as well. This large green graveyard area there summons a bunch of corpses and deals chaos damage in an area, chaos damage being, in this case, a degenerating non-elemental type damage. Now, an important thing to notice about chaos damage is that it actually bypasses energy shield as well. So if you're a character who relies on energy shield, it will actually start damaging your health and will completely ignore your energy shield, so it could be a bit of a weakness of energy shield based characters. He also, in this case, summons skeletons around his character as well, so these are short duration temporary skeletons that he'll spam around you when he's, when he's not busy doing other things. There we go. He's summoned up a bunch of short duration skeletons there. They have low life, so one shot will usually take them out, but they can certainly get in your way, and if you're surrounded by a bunch of other things that is resurrected, then you may find yourself running into problems being body blocked in by those skeletons. Same deal with dealing with other necromancers. Just use your AoE abilities to try and destroy the mobs that he's summoning at the same time as damaging him. He's actually used another skill there, another Necromancer skill, and that one is Bone Offering. What that does is makes his summoned mobs more tanky. It gives them some block to help mitigate incoming damage. but not too much of a problem for now, as long as we deal with the mobs he resummons, and then we can take him out without too many problems. Eventually you'll stumble across a very dramatic blood trail leading into the Wardens Quarters. And from here, we get a rather gruesome breadcrumb trail leading us forwards. And we will have a little bit of an encounter with someone of potential importance here. But I'll leave you guys to listen to that particular piece of lore. Heading around this way, there's nothing in here to worry about, except there's nothing to fear in here, except fear itself. Oh, we do have a lockbox, actually. Interesting little side encounter to encounter here. I didn't expect to first show you guys lockboxes here of all places, but nonetheless, I will. Lockboxes are treasure chests that do store potential goodies, but they also come with their own little challenge, in this case, guarded by 3 packs of monsters. That's kind of the basics of strong boxes. Now, these can actually spawn like items as magical and rare as well, which gives them extra challenges and extra potential rewards. To show you this, you can actually use a Scroll of Wisdom on it if it is magical, but I'm actually going to go back to town, and I'm going to grab a transmutation. An Orb of Transmutation. So as I was mentioning, I don't recommend doing this at this point in the game. I recommend just opening lockboxes as they come, but this will give you a good example here. So in this case, it summons skeletons. Now this is actually a prefix, and in this case, summon skeletons is a negative thing. It makes the box harder. Now you can actually always get 1 negative thing and 1 positive thing on a magic lockbox. So in this case, it might actually be worth using an Orb of Augmentation to try and get something positive from this. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and open it. I don't feel the need to spend any more currency on this lower level lockbox. So upon opening the lockbox, you'll actually be faced with a whole bunch of monsters that will spawn out. This can include rare and magical monsters as well, if those spawn as magical affixes on the actual lockbox itself. And we can go ahead here, and I do say lockbox, and that is out of long-term habit of calling them lockboxes. They are technically called strong boxes. One actually managed to spawn over in the corner here, so I'm going to go hit him with my ground slam. You'll see once we kill all of the monsters that spawn from it, we'll be able to take any of the loot that we've found inside of it. In this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and grab a chestplate, an armor-based chestplate here, which we got a little bit of life regeneration. I'll go ahead and chuck that on. It's a high armor chestplate, which will give us more physical damage mitigation, which will actually be fairly handy for this next upcoming fight. Following the ever-increasingly gruesome bread trail of crumbs leading us to the Warden's chambers, you should now prepare yourself for the first major boss fight of the game, Brutus. So now that you've seen how I took on Brutus, let's break down the fight and analyze it in detail. First up, I recommend opening a portal in every boss fight right at the start. If you run out of flask charges and are in trouble, you can use the portal to return to town to restore everything to full. So that they can be more dangerous, Path of Exile's boss fights are balanced around you having the ability to do this, so don't be afraid to make a quick trip to town to catch your breath. Generally, only a very experienced player with a solid build and good gear will make it through most boss fights without needing to portal back at least once. Brutus deals all physical damage with his attacks. Armor can help mitigate that damage, and evasion can help you completely avoid it. In normal difficulty, none of his attacks are likely to kill you in one hit unless you have less than 200 life. However, there is still a danger of being hit by multiple attacks in rapid succession. His regular punch deals a decent amount of damage, but it's nothing you can't simply sustain by using a life flask. Large life flasks in normal will out-heal his default attacks. Brutus will also occasionally activate a repeating spike trap that hits multiple times in a large area for a small amount of damage. This is unlikely to kill you outright, but it will wear down your health, causing you to overconsume flask charges. It's a good idea to reposition whenever this is activated underneath you. Brutus's most dangerous attack by far, however, is his own variant of Ground Slam. This powerful attack has a slow wind-up and then sends a cascading series of spikes outwards in an increasingly large conal area of effect. The ground slam will travel a huge distance, almost half the length of the room, which means that if Brutus is in the middle of the room, it will go all the way to the wall, so don't try to outrun it. The safest move when you see Brutus winding up for a slam is to run left or right, or even to the other side of him. The area of the cone is very narrow at the beginning and very wide at the end, so you have the best chance of avoiding it at close range. It seems counterintuitive, but if you're playing a ranged character, you are actually safest close to Brutus, but just out of melee range. To help deal with pesky exiles that like to hang just out of reach, however, Brutus does have another trick up his sleeve, his chain pull attack. He throws a hook at you, and if it makes a solid connection, it will deal some damage and can pull you into melee range with Brutus. You can sidestep this hook attack if you're fast enough, but if it manages to get you, then you should start to run left or right of Brutus, as he can sometimes follow up with a ground slam. Don't run directly away if you get chain pulled. After Brutus has taken sufficient damage, he'll begin to summon skeletal reinforcements from the cages dangling above. You can clear these skeletons up using your AoE abilities to get extra flask charges, whilst also trying to continue damaging Brutus as well. Alternatively, you can focus on Brutus and ignore the skeletons if your flasks are full. Just be aware that you will be taking more damage overall from the skeletons' attacks in addition to Brutus's. So as you can see at this point, with good use of our flask mechanics, of our decoy totem, and just paying attention of some of his heavy attacks, we can get through that fight at this point without too many problems. I'll go ahead and grab any loot that could potentially be helpful for us here. Even though we have things like rare items like this only has a life roll on it. Something with higher life roll and resistances could actually be more handy. And we do actually need a new pair of gloves, so we'll go ahead and make sure we grab at least one pair from here to check out. Hopefully we get something useful. We got a little bit of fire resistance there, so we'll go ahead and replace that. And I think now is an appropriate time to take a victory break, cool our feet, dip our toes in the gory remains of Brutus. And that will be the end of the Path of Exile Survival Guide, Episode 3. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments below as always. That is it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.